This module focuses on events and related topics. This module focuses on events and related topics. Events are commonly used in applications to handle external actions or input, such as a user clicking a mouse. Each action is interpreted as an event. Events are part of the event observer pattern. This design pattern is characterized by objects, subjects, and their list of dependents, observers. Events trigger objects to notify their observers of any state changes, usually by calling one of their methods. It is a very common programming concept that works well to decouple the observed code from the observers. The code fires an event, and the event manager checks whether there are any observers registered. Events can be global or registered only for a specific area, such as front-end or admin HTML. Events are declared in an events.xml file. If there is an observer registered, the event manager will call this observer method and pass the event's parameters to the observer. So, an observer has access to an event's parameters. If there are no observers registered, then the event has no effect. This example is taken directly from the Magento code. First, you can see how an event is fired in the code. Note its parameters, order, and quote objects. Next, you can see how an observer is declared in events.xml. Continued on the next slide. And finally, an observer instance. It must implement the execute event observer method. The observer object has an event object available through observer get event, which contains the event's parameters, quote and order in our example.
In this video, we will talk about events. First of all, some core file, usually it's core file, can fire an event, and it looks like this line 416. This event manager dispatch. So in many places in the core code of Magento, there are calls like the event manager dispatch. Then inside of a dispatch method, there will be parameters. One is a name of the event, and second is an array of parameters. So here on this example, we can see two events, customer login and customer data object login. Each event would have its own array of parameters. In both cases, there's only one parameter, customer, which is customer object, and again customer, which is customer data object. Now, if we want to, we can create our customization, and we can register an event register an observer for this event or for any other event fired somewhere in Magento. Magento core files can also register an observer for event fired in another place in the core. We can take a look into example of an events XML file from module catalog in the front-end area. So there are two observers, one for customer login and one for customer logout. In order to register an observer, we have to create events.xml file, either in the etc folder or in the specific area folder. Could be frontend, admin HTML, cron, or web API REST or web API SOAP. Inside of event.xml, we have to create an XML like that. So it starts with config, then it's event node, which defines an observer itself. It will have attribute name, then event name, node observer, name of the observer, which could be anything, an instance, a string that contains class name that would be an observer. Shared false, as usually means that this object should not be shared and should be created every time for every observer if we use same observer for two different events, which is unlikely. Now let's take a look into observer itself. Observer class has to implement observer interface. It's Magento Framework Event Observer Interface. And it has to implement method execute. As a parameter of an execute method, observer will receive an object of Magento Framework Event Observer which contains data passed into the event. Here we can see data is array, and in our case it only has one value customer. We can take a look at another observer where data is used. So this is typically how we get access to the data. We go observer, get event, get quote. So this will get us access to the quote object, quote parameter of the event. In this case, if you would like to get an access to the customer object, we can do something like that. We would say customer, observer, get event, get customer. So this will give us access to this object that is passed to the event. Events is a powerful customization technique in Magento 2. It used a lot in the core code, and it's also used a lot in customizations.
See your course exercises guide for instructions on how to complete this exercise and the solution.